We are going to be playing a Ruby Wild, aggressive kind of combo-y deck in this game of Hex Standard Constructed. So you can see there's resources in the deck. One of the things that Hex does that's nice, that's different from Magic because it's all digital, is Hex uses a hyper geometric distribution to make it so everyone mulligans less compared to Magic. So using a probability distribution, Hex eliminates the 10% most resource light draws in your deck and the 5% most resource dense draws. So you basically everyone mulligans 15% less because you don't have a bunch of card hands that are unkeepable on the low end and the top end because they're all resources or no resources. Another thing that's kind of sweet about Hex is that, similar to EDH, you kind of get information about what's going on in your match before you even start playing. You can see here my opponent and I have different portraits on each side of the table, but those aren't just cosmetic. My opponent started with 25 health, and I've started with 22 health. Your champion determines what your starting life total is, which is really nice because it allows you to make educated mulliganing decisions before the game even starts. So it gives you another little hedge. If you're a good player, you're able to mitigate some of that variance. So, oh, I just lost this game because my opponent's playing an aggro deck and my hand's only good against mid-range or control. You can look at your opponent and go, oh, this hand is good on average against their aggro deck, so I should keep it. I think it's much better than that, yeah. So you can see here, I would rather just everyone mulligans less, right? Is there an influence? Nope, just the starting hand. So the rest of your resource, so Flood and Screw do still happen in the game outside of that. Rune Hierophant's a great example of a really sweet digital mechanic in Hex. This card is socketed, so you can see here these things says major and minor socket. I choose customizations for this card during when I build the deck and during sideboarding. So I've socketed this so it deals double damage and has Swift Strike, so kind of like First Strike, it deals damage before my opponent's troops. And if my opponent's playing a deck where these two things aren't very useful, I can change it so this card does different things in the post-board games. Another great way Hex uses, and this isn't even a digital thing, Hex kind of mitigates some of the drawbacks that flooding can have on you by each player has a champion power with charges, and every time I play a resource, I gain a charge. So for 4 charges, this gives one of my troops +3/+3 till end of turn. And my opponent's champion for 7 charges, they create a draw 2. So they're playing a controlling champion generally, so they're able to draw some extra cards in the mid to late game when their control deck would generally be running out of gas. Yeah, that's another big thing. People are just used to games being CCGs when you play them. So Hex has a full buy, sell, trade secondary market. So a lot like Magic Online or Paper Magic, you can buy and sell cards so your collection has value. So my aspect of the Squirrel gives one of my troops +3/+3 and also +1 and Crush permanently. It's another customizable card, so it can do different things. So I don't think I want to attack in with that. I think I'd rather just play the Rune Hierophant out. Although I guess if I play the Aspect of Scroll, my opponent will be inclined to kill this. I'm just going to play the Commander P.R.O.M.P.T. Commander P.R.O.M.P.T is a 3/5 for 4 that my exhausted troops, which is kind of like tapped or used up, get plus power. My ready troops have +2 defense. So I don't think I want to attack with this because it would be a 3/2 when it attacks, and the Silvertail Adjudicator would just trade with it. Yep, if you check out this article here, how to Hex, this breaks down kind of some of the important differences between Hex's resource system and Magic's resource system, as well as breaks down all of their competitive offerings and the events that you can play on the regular in Hex. So you can see here, like I said, Hex does mitigate some of the starting hand variance, but I am a little bit resource light this game. I've only drawn 3 resources so far, so we're playing a little bit behind the gun. Thank you. If you have any questions, you feel free to ask. Opponent's attacking here with their 3/2. Hopefully we hit a resource so we can play this Dreamweaver Ancient and attack our opponent for a bunch. Alright, Surging Wildfire due for now. So this is a 1/4 with speed and rage 1, so every time the Surging Wildfire attacks, it gets +1 power permanently. And when it attacks, it deals damage equal to its power to my opponent. So it's kind of like this weird double strike where half of it always hits my opponent just when it attacks. That's going to keep getting larger every turn. This card works well with like my champion power to make it bigger, or my aspect of the squirrels to make it bigger. Like a lot of modern digital TCGs, Hex also has a completely free-to-play option. It doesn't cost any money to start playing, so you can just install it on Steam and give it a go. So, we hit this resource finally, but I'm not really interested in running my Dreamweaver Ancient into my opponent's open resources here. So, like Magic, in Hex you can respond to things. So, like, I play this card out, and my opponent could play a quick card to either interrupt it or kill it while it's still my turn. So, ideally, I want to play my Dreamweaver Ancient while my opponent doesn't have many resources up, so it can sneak through, because when this card connects to my opponent, I get to generate a random wild troop with cost equal to how much damage this dealt. How expensive is a deck? The best thing I've ever opened from a pack of Magic is a Savage Knuckleblade. So it depends on what you're looking for. Either, you know, tier 1 competitive are going to be more expensive than the non-tiered decks. The tier 1 competitive standard decks tend to range somewhere between $50 and $150 depending on the given standard season. There are some tier 2 decks that are definitely competitive for a lot less than that, but if you're looking to play, if you're the type of person that likes to play the best decks in a given format, probably somewhere in the 150 range. Or in the 100 to 150 range. So Dreamweaver Ancient's going to come into play here. And then I'm going to go ahead and Champ Power this, which might be asking for trouble, because if they have a way to interact with this, they could kill it in response. Which they do. It's a little unfortunate for me. These Aspect of the Squirrels are not particularly good against a controlling deck. My opponent's deck has a lot of ways to just kill my troops, so they can kill them in response to me trying to give them a power-up, which kind of sucks. How much is an Eternal deck? The average Eternal deck costs somewhere between, I believe, like $40 and $80, depending on what you're buying. But another thing to remember is, because Hex is a full buy-sell trade secondary market, you're not locked into that investment. You can trade it into another deck without having to cut it down to 1/4 of the value of the card you bought. And you can also just sell it back out for cash if you decide Hex isn't a game you like playing. Whereas Eternal, your investment's just gone. Like, you've just given your money to Direwolf and you can never get it back. When people ask me to describe Hex, it's basically Magic Plus. Like, it uses the digital design space to kind of go on and do things that Magic can't do. And they have a lot of really small things that Magic could do that they don't, that Hex does to kind of reduce variance, which is nice. Pretty good. So my opponent's played a Sun Soul Phoenix here. This is a 4/2 with flight and speed. Oh, I didn't even realize they been one of those earlier. We just dead. We are, in fact, just dead. So this card has speed, and my opponent's able to replay it from their discard pile. So they had a second one in there I didn't notice earlier when they binned it. Hex does, they call it the chain, but there is a thing where you're able to respond to what your opponent has going on, yes. I'm going to cut these Aspect of the Squirrels because they're really awkward against my opponent's removal. I'm going to board in a couple of these Gale Forces that deal 2 damage to every opposing troop with flight. My opponent had a bunch of flyers. I'm going to board in these copies of Pyre Strike that deal 4 damage and void something. Void means kind of like exile, so if I void my opponent's Phoenix, they're not going to be able to bring it back into play later. I played Netrunner once upon a time, but I definitely didn't have a very good grasp of it. One of my friends taught me to play during college, but we didn't get too far into it. The new gems seem interesting. Be on the play for this game, hopefully stumble slightly less. This hand's very good. We have a turn 2 Lithe Lyricist, which this gives. This is kind of like a mana dork. It's a 2 cost that at the start of our turn we gain 1 temporary resource, which means if we play this on 2, we're going to be able to play a Surging Wildfire on 3 and start attacking. So there are, I'm not playing any in this deck because we call them slow shards. There are resources that are basically cycling resources. You can pay to and discard them from your hand to draw a card and then gain some kind of special effect. The ruby one gives you a charge. The diamond one gains you life. The blood one makes your opponent lose life. So there's different things like that. Yeah, basically, if you've played a lot of Magic, the biggest thing, and I forgot to do this a lot, is you have to remember to use your champion power when it's optimal. It glows when you can use it to remind you, but the champions are the biggest thing to get used to, and the resource system is slightly different, but it's pretty easy to transition. Okay, well, I'm just going to jam a second Surging Wildfire down their throat here, I think. So, start on this. See if my opponent has an interrupt for it. They do not, it doesn't look like. I'm going to wait on pulling the trigger on my champion power. My champion power is actually pretty bad against these control decks because I need like a guaranteed window where they're not going to be able to kill my thing for it to really pay off. I've not tried Spellweaver. So the problem is with a lot of these other games that I would like to try, they demand that I make this investment to try them. And then like, if I don't like the game, my money's just gone because I just vomited it into the bottomless CCG pit. So, like, I never really get a chance to try a lot of these games that exist fully because, like, I'm not going to dump a bunch of money into them. Eternal really did catch my interest. I enjoyed Eternal's gameplay a lot, and I put probably about $40 into it, but that was only enough to get me, like, one Tier 2 constructed deck, and I didn't feel like grinding for more. Opponent's deck is probably tier 2, 2.5. It's a bit of a brew. There's a 2-shard control deck that's pretty popular in Hex right now, but my opponent's got a 3rd shard color in their deck, which is not super popular. Stifling Sting, sure, that's great for us. I'm going to go ahead and play this Rune Hierophant, and play this Acolyte of Shoku, and I'm going to pass the turn. This Rune Hierophant gets larger every time another troop enters play under our control. They might just be dead this turn if they don't have multiple pieces of interaction. They only have 3 resources, so the chances of them having multiple pieces of interaction are kind of low. So this card, I can pay 3 to generate a 1/1 with speed that must attack and dies at end of turn, which isn't fantastic, but like, it makes my Rune Hierophant larger. And then I'm going to go ahead and champion power my Surging Wildfire. So Surging Wildfire and Rune are both lethal here, so they have to answer both of these or they are dead. And it looks like they're dead. Peace, Welsh. Thanks for hanging out. I appreciate you watching and for sticking around. I don't think I want to change anything for the second game where I'm on the draw. Or this third game where I'm on the draw. Just go ahead and click submit. This hand's kind of slow, but I really don't like mulliganing against control decks. All right. The curve of Commander P.R.O.M.P.T and Dreamweaver Ancient's pretty good. This hand has 3 must-answer threats in it, and I've got Gale Forces to make my opponent's threats a little bit better. The thing that's a little bit bad about this hand is my opponent has a card in their deck where if I have more cards in my hand when they play it, they get to draw cards. So if they have that on 4, if I don't draw a 2-drop or a 3-drop to play next turn, they're going to get to draw some cards, which kind of sucks. Opponents had perfect thresholds all 3 games here. It's pretty fortunate. It's another Commander P.R.O.M.P.T. Alright, well. It's, you know, we said this hand was a little bit slow, but again, I don't love mulliganing against control decks where I just need, like, every card to be a threat. It's just gonna get awkward because opponent's gonna start drawing some stuff here. There's the Adjudicator, so, yeah, because I didn't have anything to play out, they got to draw 2 cards with this. This card gains them 5 life if they have less life than me. Right on time, Lithe Lyricist. Just draw the 2-drop on turn 4 when we finally have something else to do. Commander P.R.O.M.P.T to go. See if they have an answer to my P.R.O.M.P.T. Yep. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna lead on Commander P.R.O.M.P.T here again. Commander P.R.O.M.P. dodges a lot of my opponent's removal is damage based, like deals 3 and 4 points of damage. Discombobulate. So this interrupts the card, and then it gives us each a random card that we can cast. So I got a Rust Bucket Distractor, and who knows what they got. Commander P.R.O.M.P.'s very powerful. It's another Silver Talon Adjudicator. Yep. It's unfortunate. When the Owls get to draw cards, they usually run away with the game. That's kind of what happened in the first game. We stumbled, and they were able to run away with it because of that. Alright, I think I'm just going to slam this Dreamweaver Ancient here. Because like, a lot of their removal costs 3 resource, and they only have 2 up this turn. So I'm going to play this, and then try and Champ Power it, and go for broke here. Hopefully they don't have something that kills this. If this hits my opponent, I'll get a random 7-cost troop. They're playing Pyre Strikes, and, ooh, that's a really good card to hit against the control deck. When this deploys, Death Cries, dies, or untaps, it creates a 2/1. That's pretty decent. So now they need to answer this and these. Hopefully this Gale Force. And the kind of sweet thing about Hex is that Hex gives us data about every constructed match that's ever played in a ranked game. So as soon as this match is done, I'll be able to go onto a website and pull up exactly the deck list that my opponent is playing. Well, this is going to work out slightly less good for my opponent because they played a card that turns all of our troops into 1/1s that die at the end of turn, but I'm going to get to play a Commander P.R.O.M.P.T on my turn, so I'm going to hit them for 9. Actually, I guess if they don't have another resource and I draw a resource, I might just play this Dreamweaver. Alright, I'm just going to Commander P.R.O.M.P. I want to hold this Gale Force up, so what happens in game 1 where my opponent just played a bunch of Phoenixes and killed us, that doesn't happen. They could dingle the P.R.O.M.P., you're not wrong. Sigmund's game, sure. They're playing their card that lets them draw it. They activated their champion power, which lets them play this card that draws them 2 cards. They've binned any Phoenixes yet? They've not. There's a Phoenix. Just gonna go ahead and Gale Force this. 2 damage each flying troop. Hopefully this Dreamweaver Ancient can connect again this turn. So, I don't have my champion. They had a dingle. Alright, we're probably dead. Opponent's going to be able to return this Phoenix to play next turn. He likely can't race that. He's got a full grip over there. His hand ended up being a little bit too slow. So, Phoenix, they can void 6 actions or spells from their discard pile and return this to play. So, basically, they can take 6 actions out of here and replay this for free. So, they've got a ton of actions in here. They've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So, they can already bring that Phoenix back. Yep, so you see the actions going to the void there. If they return it to play. Yeah, they played one out of their hand and then immediately returned one that first game. Scar and Breath to kill my Dingler, that makes sense since I know I have Commander P.R.O.M.Ps. Did do a lot of stuff next turn. Stifling Sting's gonna kill us because it can deal 3 damage right to our dome. I'm gonna go Lithe Lyricist, Rust Bucket, and then just pass here on the off chance my opponent can't kill us. Like, if they have all bricks in hand, we can play this Commander P.R.O.M.P.T and kill them next turn. The new Phoenix is very, very good. There's the text box on that Phoenix. Courtesy Cruise Bot. Pyre Strike one of them. Yep. Oh, they milled the second Phoenix earlier. Okay, good games, opponent. So, yeah, probably shouldn't... We stumbled and died a little bit in that first game, but that third game, I probably just shouldn't have kept that hand that I did. It was probably a little bit slow. Thankfully, like a lot of the modern digital TCGs, the constructed ladder on Hex is free to play, so you don't have to spew money to test out new competitive deck ideas. Even if you just want to dork around with things, you can just build a deck and then hop on into the queue. Hi, Declan. You want to come say hi to the internet, Declan? Want to come say hi? Say hi, internet. My name is Declan. It's a powerful card for sure. So, one of the things that Hex is really good at doing that I wish Magic would do is that they have a lot of really powerful cards in their game, as opposed to there being just like a small selection of powerful cards. Like, you know, Gideon Ally of Zendikar is really, really pushed. And there aren't a lot of pushed cards in the other colors. So, like, white ends up being a little bit overbearing because Gideon Ally of Zendikar is pushed. Alright, we got a live one here. You can have a chip. You cannot have the entire bag of chips. Would you like a chip, Declan? Yeah, right? This end's okay. It's got a Righteous Outlaw on 2, and then Surging Wildfires on 4 to follow it up. You wanna come say hi, Jake? This is my oldest. This is Jacob. I'm a father of 2. Jake's 3. You're very loud, Declan. Very, very loud. Alright, play Wild Shard out here, pass the turn. So my opponent's champion also starts with 22 life like mine, and for 3 charges, if they played an action this turn, they summon a 1/1 with flight and speed. So opponent's deck is usually kind of an aggressive control deck. Usually they play a lot of card draw and then actions that deal damage to troops or... My Righteous Outlaw is very poorly positioned against their deck because this card creates an additional 1/1 when it comes into play, so they basically have 2 idiots that can hop in front of this. I think I'm just going to go ahead and play this and attack, though. My opponent's deck has a card in it that gets a bonus when my opponent attacks with more troops, so even though I'm, like, trading this for, like, half of one of their cards, yeah, so they're just going to take the hit and then probably kill this with a piece of removal. The champions do not attack things directly like they do in Eternal or Hearthstone. There are some champion abilities that, like, affect troops or the board directly, but the champion will say that if they do. So, like, there's a champion that actually just got spoiled for the upcoming set that for 4 charges, you sacrifice a troop to give another troop -2/-2. Need more chips? Weird. So opponent didn't have a way to kill my guy, and... Huh. So, now when he readies, I can turn him into a different troop, and this guy says the first time he attacks, he deals damage equal to his power to my opponent and one of the troops they control. I'm actually going to give my opponent a chance to kill this. I'm going to wait a turn until I have Commander P.R.O.M.P.T, because if I get to Commander P.R.O.M.P.T plus Champion Power, this guy is going to deal a lot of damage. Armies of Mordor! With the severed head cheer to fill the cup. Thank you for the kappas, I do appreciate it. Yeah, if he has Lasgard's Vengeance, we're probably going to be in a bit of trouble here. If they attack with everything into this Runier, we're probably going to get Lasgard, which will feel a little bad. Lasgard's Vengeance is a card where it costs 8 resources to play initially, but every time you attack with a troop, its cost gets -1 while it's in your hand permanently, and then it deals 4 damage to your opponent and every troop they control. So, yeah, I think if he attacks with everything here, he can actually go off with Lasgard still. Because he's attacked twice already. So maybe I was supposed to have attacked with this to avoid getting Lasgard this turn. The upside if they don't have Lasgards is pretty huge, though, here. The Commander P.R.O.M.P. comes down, and I think we just kill them next turn. They did not attack with everything. So this has Swift Strike and deals double damage. So if I block here, it's going to kill their guy before this dies. It's going to deal 4 damage before it can deal any damage back to my Runier. And then we're going to take 4 here. Let's go ahead and play this. And then I think I'm just going to play Commander P.R.O.M.P. here. And then Commander P.R.O.M.P.'s going to make my Runier slightly larger. And then I'm going to go ahead and champ power my Scarlet Swordsman here, I think. So when this gets to attack, it's going to deal damage equal to its power to one of my opponent's troops. So they have a Transmogrifate here, maybe? They do. So they're going to take my guy and turn him into a random artifact constant or troop that costs 1 less. So they're able to make him much, much worse. I think at this point I actually want to just pump the brakes. Yeah, I'm just going to hold on for now. They can keep their ground pounders locked down pretty well with these guys, and then my Surging Wildfires will close out the game pretty quickly off the top. These guys both have 5 defense, so they're not going to die to a Lasgard's Vengeance, which is nice. Yep, just attacks with that, sure. Our guys are being held at bay. The Surging Wildfire deals damage equal to its power just when it attacks for the first time, or when it attacks each time. So that means that my opponent's going to take damage from it even if they jump block it, which is great. And this guy's going to attack as a 4 because of Commander P.R.O.M.P.T. Correct. If they attacked with everything, I would not block with P.R.O.M.P.T. So this guy did 4 to them when he attacked. Oh, they're just taking this hit? Okay. So next turn I can play a second Surging Wildfire and then crunch with both. So this card just says Prophesized here. Normally this doesn't draw a card, but one of my opponent's cards they played earlier, Thunderfield's here, modified this card while it's in my opponent's deck. So in addition to looking at their top 2 and picking 1, they also get to draw a card afterwards because of the prophecy that was on it. So they get to make another Diddly Dork here. What you got, opponent? Opponent is not happy with their hand, apparently, so... Huh. Righteous Outlaw is pretty terrible in this matchup. It doesn't line up well against their things, it doesn't line up well against all their pile of 1/1s. Blitz and Aspect of the Squirrel are kind of a liability because of their cards like Transmogrifade that are quick speed interaction. I'm going to bring in these Carnasaurs. This is a 2/2 that fights one of my opponent's troops, so it's good at eating their 1/1s and then sticking around afterwards. Crocosaur, when it comes into play, it fights 2 of my opponent's troops, so it's good to pound them down that way. And then a Gale Force and a Chomp. This hits all their troops with flying, so it cleans up their Bumblebots, and this also cleans up Bumblebots because it destroys an artifact. So I think we're going to board like this. We'll keep in some Aspect and some Blitz, because there are definitely situations where they, like, spend all of their resources and we can just, like, get them. But I think on average we don't want all 8 of that effect like we do. Can you give me your bull? And I'll pour your chips in there. Seems reasonable. It's got turn 2 Acolyte of Shoku to kind of ramp us up here. Definitely needs some more resources, but, you know, not every hand can have everything in it, so hopefully we run a few resources off the top. One of the things that's kind of neat about Hex, if you're a programming geek like I am, you'll see that deck list on the side of the screen. There updates when I save from the reserves. Hex is a full client and server-side API, so if you're a data junkie or someone who likes to poke around at stuff like that, you can have full access to it from the client as your games are played. I actually wrote the tools in Python that grab the information from the deck list there as they're saved. The deck list also gets automatically uploaded to a website, so you can see that Hex Decks button below the stream. Unlike Magic Online, it automatically updates with my deck list as I save them, so that way when people are looking for them, they can find them there if I make them public. Opponent's got a Blamsmith. This is a 2/2 for 2. Then when it comes into play, it makes a power-up called a Valor that gives their troop +1/+1 permanently. Still have not hit a resource. We'll make a Ruby here with this and then play our Acolyte of Shoku out. Acolyte of Shoku, if it lives, will at least guarantee us a 3rd resource to play the Rune Hierophant, but we do want to draw some resources. We've got these 5 drops in our hand that would be nice. Is there any deck/archetype you'd recommend? I would definitely recommend checking out this list here. The 3rd deck in that list is called Redlings. It's the most expensive on the list, but it's one of the tier 1 aggressive decks that has a lot of play to it. The other 2 decks are much cheaper, and they're reasonable tier 2 decks. I always recommend people start off with a more aggressive strategy as opposed to a mid-range or a control deck, because the aggressive strategies allow you to kind of get some free wins based on the power level of your cards while you're still learning the card pool, because playing a control deck while you're still trying to figure out like what all the cards are and what you're playing around can be difficult. Opponent's looking like they might be missing their 3rd resource as well. Yep. Hey, we hit ours because we're professional. So let's go ahead and play this Commander P.R.O.M.P.T out here since we have an extra temporary resource. And then my 0/3 here gets to attack for 2 because Commander P.R.O.M.P.T says when it's exhausted, we get an extra thing. If you're looking for a control deck, I actually top-8'd Hex's last 5K with a 2-shard control deck, a Diamond Sapphire control deck. But again, I would not recommend a control deck for learning to play when you're just starting out Hex. I wouldn't recommend that to anyone starting Magic or any TCG. You definitely don't want to start with trying to dirtle around when you're not sure what you're dirtling into. Yeah, and because the ladder's free to play, like, even if you're playing with a tier 2 deck, there's, like, basically no fear, right? I'm just going to attack with the... No, there's no reason to attack. I'm just going to play the Rune Hierophant post-combat here. I don't want to trade this for their 3/3. So the standard deck list, how Hex works, Hex releases a new set every 4.5 to 5 months, and Hex rotates their 2 oldest set with every even set release. They just started spoiler season for set 7 in this coming week, or a couple of weeks ago, so set 7 will release soon, so Hex won't have a rotation for another 6 months or so, give or take, once set 7 and then set 8 releases. Hex also does have support for their non-rotating format, which includes all of their sets. Currently, their standard format has 4 sets in it, sets 3 through 6, and then set 7 will be introduced and be a 5th set. The Hex rotation is so much easier to understand for me than Magic's rotation cycle, because Hex, there's just like always 4 or 5 sets legal. It's really easy to follow. So, opponent played a resource and still didn't do anything, which is weird. The Yodel deck, that was the Yodel burn deck, has rotated out of standard at this point. A couple of the core components to it left. Although I guess there's probably still something there that's still tier 2. I guess we got an Arena Regular reprint. I guess one of the most important cards to the deck, Arena Regular, got reprinted. Crackling Bolt is no longer legal, which is definitely a downgrade for the deck. Gorge the Gorgot is hot, but it's really resource intensive, which is kind of bad for an aggressive deck like that. There's a Mono Ruby Angus deck that sees some amounts of play in the standard constructed format. The straight Mono Ruby Angus deck was tier 1 as one of the 2 best decks last season. This season, the burn decks aren't doing as hot, but the Mono Ruby Angus variations are definitely tier 2. Huh. I wonder what they kept. So they don't have Transmogger Fades. They haven't played anything since they hit 3 resources. Kind of just running them over here with our aggro beatdowns. We had someone ask about a control deck. I'm going to play one more match with this deck, I think, and then maybe we'll close out with some Sapphire Diamond control. Maybe this will be the last one with this. I like the control deck better. I'm a big fan of Dirtling. As someone who likes to hang out and just draw a bunch of cards, Hex is very nice. So if you're familiar with Modern, if you were hanging out from the Magic stream, Corey Burkhart's a pretty well-known Modern player. He always plays Grixis Control with 4 Cryptic Commands, and he's one of Hex's card designers and testers on their team. So this is definitely a game that supports the dirtliest of control decks. Corey gonna do right by us and let us dirtle around. I think my opponent's just dead here. Now they're certainly dead. So I'm going to blitz this, target this. And then if they have a transmog for this, the aspect of the squirrel is going to kill them on one of these Runeers. Because this is going to crank this up to 6 power, so this is going to hit for 7 when it attacks. So if they have a transmog, they probably need to transmog this. But even so... Oh, they're transmogging Commander P.R.O.M.P.T. Sure. That takes a lot of power off of everything. Since they're out of resources now, I'm just going to go ahead and aspect of the squirrel this, which puts it up to 10 power. And then we're going to attack for a bunch.